Hi everyone, welcome to Unit 9 of Cat 125R. I wanted to do something a little bit different for our introduction video this week and spend some time taking a close look at an example of a Storify story so that you have a model to think about as you begin collaborating on your own group's project. So the assignment for the Storify collaborative curation project asks you to accomplish three things. In answering your research question, it asks you to 1, put sources in dialogue with each other, 2, help a reader navigate those sources, and 3, use written text to comment on how these sources help audiences better understand the major thematic issue, which in our case is intellectual property in the age of the internet. So I wanted to look at an example of a Storify story to see if we could think about how this particular story goes about accomplishing these three things. So this is a story that I think the theme is relevant to the course, and it's also a current issue that was featured on Storify. So this is a story put together by the website Mashable, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and it is on the recent FCC net neutrality vote. And net neutrality is, the vote that was held was about whether or not to allow internet service providers to essentially allow two speeds of internet service, one for corporations who are able to pay a fee for faster service and another for everybody else. So here is the story put together by Mashable on Storify. So let's talk about the first goal that you are meant to accomplish with your Storify project, which is putting sources in dialogue with one another. And what does that mean to put sources in dialogue with one another? This is something you might have been asked to do with research projects in the past. And this idea is essentially helping to show your reader or your audience how different sources respond to one another, maybe disagree with one another, or maybe build on one another. Essentially, you're showing the relationships between sources. And this is what your role as a researcher really is. Otherwise, right, we could just throw a bunch of sources together in a list. But the work you're doing is showing how they relate to each other, how they talk to one another. You're putting them in that dialogue. So one of the main ways that this Storify accomplishes that you might want to consider using for your own is these headings, right? So we have FCC net neutrality vote passes, Republican commissioners dissented, right? So we have an introduction, essentially, right? This is what happened. And then we have these headings that show the different voices in the debate, in the issue. It shows where different stakeholders ended up landing in the issue. So Republican commissioners dissented, Democratic commissioners spoke in favor, other stakeholders who spoke out in favor, and then finally those who were not pleased with the way the vote turned out. So helping kind of lay out for the audience right away what the different positions were so that we have a sense of how the sources that fall under those headings relate to one another. So here's a set of sources that have one position, here's a set of sources that have another position, and here's a set of sources that are responding to those positions that were held by the Democrats and Republicans on the commission. So that's one way that sources were put into dialogue with one another. You're also asked to help your reader navigate through these sources, and those headings help with that a lot, kind of decoding or categorizing what the sources are doing for the piece. The selection of the sources itself has a lot to do with helping your reader navigate them as well, and that's something you've been working on with your draft that you turned in on Friday. So let's look at this section here on the testimony provided by the creator of the television series The Killing and the CEO of Etsy. So here we have an interesting technique, right? So it explains who these people are, right? Entrepreneurs who represent the ideals of the open and free internet. Etsy CEO Chad Dickerson and Veena Sood. Right here, a hyperlink, something you really could take advantage of with this multimedia platform. So a hyperlink to her Wikipedia page explaining who she is. And this really helps you get a sense of, we lost our position here. So it helps you get a sense of where these sources are coming from, and as a result, their credibility, which helps support your credibility with your own research project. So we have an article here written by the Etsy founder. So this is also another way to help your readers navigate through the sources, and that is by using a range of types of sources. So here we have a written article, right? We can follow, here's a tweet about the article and then the link to the article itself. So a piece of written text by the CEO of Etsy giving his position on net neutrality. And then we also have an image of Veena Sood, the television series creator, as well as an excerpt, a quote from her speech, right? So drawing on different types of sources and explaining to your reader how those different media can provide a unique perspective on the issue. So here we have written text, spoken text, the excerpt of the speech, an image. We also have a video here or an image of a video that was provided or presented by Tim Berners-Lee. Finally, your Storify should comment on how these sources connect to the bigger issue. In here we can see this happening in the final section of this Storify, not all were pleased. And here Mashable presents responses to the vote by companies and trade groups. Here's one by Verizon and one by CTIA. And here Mashable uses text to help the reader understand these sources by providing a small amount of analysis of each one. So here they analyze the format of the press release written by Verizon, pointing out that it was, well, they describe it as a stunt, but that it was dated as being from 1934 and written with a font that would be used to imitate a typewriter. In their analysis is that Verizon is suggesting that the laws that the FCC is working from are outdated and not relevant to the internet age. They also provide this response from CTIA, and they use text here, Mashable uses text here to explain to the audience what that is, right? That is the Wireless Association, which represents US mobile carriers. So this is something you want to make sure that you're doing in your Storify as well, that you're explaining who authors are or who creators are of the sources that you're using to help your audience orient themselves and to understand where these materials are coming from, which can be a challenge in an environment or in a setting like this one where you're pulling from multiple locations. So you can really help orient your readers by indicating what website or individual created these materials and doing more than just giving their name, but explaining really who they are and how their background might help the reader understand the source itself. So these are some things to keep in mind as you are working on your collaborative project. So keep finding those sources and working with one another to pull them together into an exciting multimedia portfolio. Good luck.